Hi, my name is Hanan Ahmed, and the person I will be presenting my speech to is my mom. Every voice should be heard and every vote should be taken into consideration in a truly democratic society. Learn the vital significance of equal voting rights and how they form the basis of an inclusive and fair democracy. There is the importance of equal voting rights as the bedrock of democratic societies, considering the historical struggles for suffrage and the principles of fairness, representation, and inclusivity underlines that in order to preserve and strengthen democratic systems, equal voting rights must be protected and promoted. Today, we are going to examine the idea of equal voting rights and the contribution it makes to the advancement of the democratic ideas of representation, justice, and inclusiveness. We are also going to explore tactics and programs that support equal voting rights, such as voter engagement, education, policy changes, and grassroots activism to make sure that everyone has fair access to the political process. First, let's look at the problem. Implementing changes to safeguard against voter suppression, promoting diverse voter education outreach programs, and arguing for fair and open electoral procedures are all necessary to address the issues related to equal voting rights. Voter suppression describes intentional actions taken to keep some groups, especially minority communities, from casting votes. Taken from the U.S. Today Online in March of 2021, to state the obvious, voting should not be a partisan or race-based issue. Voting should be easy and accessible to all, and it shouldn't have to take a deadly virus or deadly pandemic to increase access to the ballot box. We should make permanent the positive changes that election officials put in place last year. Universal access to absentee voting should be the norm, not the exception. States like Utah and Washington have seen high turnout rates because of mail-in voting without a partisan impact. Expanding access to voter registration and voting by mail is the only way that we can ensure that voters elect leaders based on principles, not party. Don't let voters get disenfranchised. There should be a guarantee that minority communities have an equal opportunity to elect politicians of their choosing. These laws frequently address reconstructing methods. Certain groups may be less inclined to participate in the election process if they feel excluded or believe that their votes to be worthless. A quote from the Tennessean in February of 2022, last year at least 52 reconstructive voter laws were passed in states across the country that limited options to vote and weakened the ability of election officials to monitor elections. In recent weeks, the U.S. Senate blocked passage of two pieces of legislation that would have strengthened voting rights for all Americans. The John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act would have restored and reinforced parts of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. The Freedom to Vote Act would have expanded voting access by making an election day a holiday, required early voting of at least 15 days, ensured mail-in ballots, and made it more difficult for states to remove eligible voters from voter rolls, among other measures. Then there comes the battle of accessibility and making sure that all communities are provided the same opportunities to cast their votes. Closing or moving polling places, especially in minority or low-income neighborhoods, can put people at a disadvantage if they have trouble getting to other polling places or don't have easy access to them. Taken from the New York Times in July of 2021, there's two ways to prove a Section 2 case. You can show that there's purposeful discrimination, or you can show that the law at issue at hand had a discriminatory effect, said Tom Perez, a former chairman of the Democratic National Committee and a former chief of the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department. The court narrowed the effects test. The purpose claims were unchanged, and the Georgia case is a purpose case. The Georgia cases were recently filed. They included claims of intentional discrimination, and they include constitutional claims. Having understood the historical context, let's dive deeper into the causes of unequal voting rights. The cause of equal voting rights is rooted in the principles of democracy and the recognition that every citizen should have an equal voice in shaping their government. Protests, advocacy campaigns, and community organizing have played a significant role in legislative changes and holding governments accountable for protecting equal voting rights. From the news press in January of 2022, it's clearly an anti-voter law, said Sabrina Khan, Deputy Director and Senior Staff Attorney for the Advancement Project National Office, a nonprofit, nonpartisan, civil and voting rights organization. It has power to silence voters in large blocks, particularly minorities, and hurt grassroots groups like ours. The movement towards equal voting rights has been driven by historical struggles, social movements, and legal reforms. From the Texas Tribune in June of 2021, Thompson was born into segregation, ultimately obtained her law degree from a school that existed only because the state would not allow white and black students to learn together. In the meeting, she recalled growing up in a Texas that used racist rules to keep her grandparents from the ballot box, fear-mongering to suppress black voters that had touched 3 generations of her family, including herself. We have now seen the reasonings behind this issue. Let's move on to a solution to the problem. Equal voting rights are the foundation of a truly democratic society, ensuring that every person has an equal voice in shaping their government and society. Promoting equal rights upholds democratic principles and ensures fair representation. Taken from the New York Times in March of 2021, you can't build a foundation of lies and then use that foundation to disenfranchise voters, particularly voters of color, said Tom Perez, the former Democrat National Committee chair who prosecuted voting rights as head of Justice Department Civil Rights Division during Obama administration. We're on really dangerous turf right now when you have Republicans fueling these laws on a basis of falsehoods, and the courts are going to be a last resort. Also, from another article from the New York Times in June of 2021, we need to make sure that the federal government is an active participant in protecting the right to vote, said Tom Perez. We can't rely on private lawsuits. As we conclude our discussion, let's summarize the main points and talk about the importance of equal voting rights. Equal voting rights are crucial for a healthy democracy because they guarantee fair representation and give people the ability to take an active part in politics. It is important to understand that the fight for equal voting rights is a continuing one, and that more needs to be done to remove structural obstacles, ensure inclusivity, and defend everyone's right to take part in the democratic process. We may move towards establishing democratic justice by adding historical challenges, recognizing the reasons behind unequal voting rights, and putting the required reforms into place. Thank you.